Dachau, Buchenwald, Auschwitz. Just some of the names that haunt humanity's collective memory, names that cry out with 6 million innocent voices against an unspeakable evil unique in the annals of history. But who among us have heard of the most sinister of these places, an extermination camp so pernicious in its crimes that its very name is still illegal in 9 European countries, a name uttered only in hushed tones among the very learned? That place? Sonnenschein. Even today, there are those precious souls whose testimony against hate and against bigotry has gone unheard. According to the German Office of Holocaust Reparations, there are still an astonishing 9.4 million Jewish survivors still alive today claiming to have been a prisoner of this camp at some point during the war. It is time that their stories be heard. The Anne Frank diary is very prominent in the popular psyche, but it is only indicative of the struggles of many other contemporary Jewish families. Less known is the heartbreaking saga of the Cohens, a family of Jews who in 1939 found themselves hiding in the Bavarian home of Hans and Heidi Schmidt. After weeks of stealth and clandestine living, the family met their inevitable fate. Tragically, the Cohens were discovered by Hans as he was storing away their Christmas decorations. Hans was especially surprised at seeing the Cohens in his attic since he just had the house sprayed for Hebrews only last month. The Cohens, along with other Jews in the area, were rounded up by the authorities and transported to Camp Sonnenschein by train in overcrowded cattle cars. They were so tightly packed that a person could hardly breathe, much less turn around. Survivor Saul Franken, grandfather of the modern-day American politician, recalled wistfully the endemic amounts of anonymous groping that occurred. Even then, however, amid this fear and anxiety, when one would expect a certain unity among these oppressed people, racism reared its ugly head as the black Israelites were forced to ride in the back of the cattle car. Mr. Cohen recalled the sign above the entrance gate as their train arrived at Sonnenschein. According to him, it was like adding salt to the wound. This sign, Arbeit macht frei, meaning work sets you free, originally hung above the infamous Auschwitz entrance gate. However, German officials had moved it after noting that it was not having a favorable impact among the Jewish population there. As such, Third Reich marketing agents developed a new slogan for the camp: Auschwitz, it's for lovers. Upon arrival, the camp inmates were stripped, cleaned, and deloused before receiving their assignments. Mr. Cohen recalled the degradation and humiliation he felt at the time. Quote, I was so saddened when I walked past the line to the women's shower. The indignity of it all, my God! It's like every one of these broads was wearing a fur diaper. Nothing but old-growth forest down there. I wouldn't see that much bush on a Jew again until Jeb's 2016 campaign fundraisers. Many of the newly arrived felt disheartened by the somewhat rustic appearance of the camp. However, there was some attempt by the Germans to make the rather drab living quarters more homey. The windows included curtains with floral patterns. Some of the walls were adorned with pleasant landscape paintings, and particularly noticeable was the plethora of parchment lampshades that provided a warm glow to the barracks interior. According to Mr. Cohen, many of the camp's inmates complained of the atrocious conditions in the camp hospital. Chairs in the waiting room were not padded and were really uncomfortable. And the only copies in there of Commentary magazine were 5 years old, and most distressing of all, in-house pharmacy prices were 15% more expensive than Murray's drugstore in Hamburg. But perhaps even more egregious was the fact that the infamous Dr. Joseph Mengele would often conduct unspeakable medical experiments on the inmate population. Camp hospital records reveal appalling procedures like organ reassignment and non-anesthetized amputations. However, to Mengele's defense, this represented only a very small percentage of the procedures. The overwhelming majority of surgeries performed was rhinoplasty. But man's inhumanity to man was not just visited upon the Jewish inmates by the Germans. When caged together in crowded barracks, men will often prey upon one another. According to the traumatized Mr. Cohen, quote, I had 120 different rapists assault me during my time in Camp Sonnenschein. However, to be fair, the nicest ones did put the diamonds back in for me when they were finished.
Oh, no.
Even in this most dismal of places, these Jews found ways to escape the drudgery of their existence. Mr. Cohen recounts that one of his bunkmates, Herschel Weinstein, patriarch of the famous Hollywood family, was particularly fond of cultivating ficus plants. Others in the camp found escape through that most ancient of vices, gambling. The thrill of wagering their meager rations made them feel alive again. They would run cockroach races and shoot craps with dice made from their own teeth that had fallen out from their heads from the scurvy and the malnutrition. According to Mr. Cohen, however, the most difficult game to run was the death pool, since the gas vans always arrived on a Tuesday. Perhaps not unsurprising, tales of suffering were not limited merely to the inmates of the camp, but the guards themselves often met with tragic ends. The story of one particular guard, Wolfgang, considered quite handsome among the female inmates, is quite revealing. In the spring of '45, the atmosphere in the camp had become increasingly tense with the growing uncertainty of the war's outcome. One desperate Jewish female, realizing that this might be her last opportunity to have an Aryan-looking baby, became so emboldened as to blackmail Wolfgang into having sex with her. If he refused, she threatened to spread incriminating lies about him to the encroaching Allied forces when the camp was liberated. Wolfgang, repulsed by the looming smell of wet bread, could not bring himself to follow through with it. 4 months later, Wolfgang was executed as a war criminal. These tragic vignettes are just a small stitch in this tapestry woven of pain and heartbreak that has come to be known as Sonnenschein. Today, many of these survivors have come to peace with the time they spent in the camp. Fortunately, Mr. Cohen has found cathartic means by which to both share his suffering and educate future generations about this greatest of evils visited upon mankind. He is currently directing the critically acclaimed off-Broadway production of Auschwitz on Ice. Additionally, he is a development consultant for Walt Disney World's latest attractions, Holocaust Mountain, and the ever-popular Semites of the Caribbean. In conclusion, it is so vitally important that men of the West and the governments that represent them, especially that of Germany, never forget that these survivors of unparalleled brutality, these precious chosen people of God, prefer that their checks be made out to cash. You know, for tax reasons.
Jesus Christ.